everyone, and welcome back to A Cup of Coffee, the show to go with your morning cup of coffee. I'm Umar, and this is my co-host, Amaan.
Hello, everyone. We are here today with our guest, Rami Ismail. Rami, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. I'm Rami Ismail. I'm a game developer slash industry ambassador. I don't quite know what I do anymore. I used to run a game studio called Vlambeer. Was a small two-person Dutch independent game studio. We were around for about a decade, from like the early indie days, and sort of went through the entire like indie boom until we kind of realized in 2020 that we kind of set everything we wanted with that studio. So now I'm sort of rediscovering who I am, what I do. It turns out that if you spend your entire 20s being a game studio, that you kind of don't know who you are. Beyond that, Dutch Egyptian, 32 years old now, live in the Netherlands. Used to spend most of my days traveling, but because of COVID, I'm...
Right, yeah, you must miss that a whole bunch.
It's been a little weird.
Right. Yeah, because I used to travel like 2 or 3 times a year as well before COVID, and then COVID happened. And just because we live in Texas, right, and we're just stuck here. We've pretty much been stuck here for the past 2 years, right? So,
right. I mean, my travel was a little obscene. I'll be honest. Like now, being in the Netherlands and seeing how much I can still do without travel, I'm almost a little embarrassed about how much I travel because I was flying 2-3 times a week.
Oh, wow.
Right. Like I had a year where I hit 120 flights.
Wow.
For the year.
And you know, miles.
I have a ridiculous amount of miles. I've been spending miles on most of my flights for like comfort seat upgrades, and somehow the miles don't go down. That's how much I'm flying. So it was too much, but I was also in my 20s, and a big part of what was important to me as a game developer is, like I said, I was Dutch Egyptian, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The thing that bothered me growing up is that I always saw games and everybody I played as looked like my Dutch friends. And everybody I was shooting at looked like my Egyptian friends.
Yeah.
I was like, so then probably, logically, the Egyptians would make the games where you play as the people that look like my Egyptian friends and you shoot at the people that look like my Dutch friends. But those games didn't exist.
Yeah. I
was like, how's that possible? So I started looking around and I realized that just the games industry isn't fair, right? Opportunities are far more like plenty in the US, in Europe, in the UK, Canada, Japan, China, but not in the Middle East, not in larger Asia, not in South America, not in Africa. So I started traveling to meet developers there and see if I could help, right? See if I could even the skills a little. So that's why I was traveling. Okay. Having had 10 years to meet all those communities, and meet all the people that are trying to build that means that now I don't have to travel anymore to help those communities because I already know the people that are doing it. So it was a good use of my 20s.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine that sounds very interesting. And I guess to lead off of that, in terms of your traveling and just that purpose of balancing the scales, as you said, what was the most notable or the most interesting to you community that you found that was trying to balance those scales?
That's a very good question. It's a little hard to give like it's like rating your babies or something. Like even though they're not my babies, but all of them are people. Like the thing that stands out to me is game development is a hard job.
Yeah.
Right. It's not an easy job. It's a demanding job. It's creatively exhausting. The community feedback can be very painful, can be very toxic. Because sometimes it's lovely, right? But altogether, sort of like the stacking of pain that comes with being in the games industry is harsh. And then you go. I was in West Africa, right? Wow. I was visiting a studio, and at the end of the day, when they were shutting down the game studio, they printed the code that they had worked on today and put it in a folder with code. They swapped out the pages that had changed, and they basically what we would merge on Git.
Yeah.
or manage the code in some way. They were printing out, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, we're just printing the code in case electricity goes out for like a week or two, so we can still do some work." And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, if I had to print my code so I could like write code and then test it 2 weeks later, I would probably not be a game developer.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, right? Like I would have found another job.
Yeah.
The people that are making games like that, the people that are making games in refugee camps, people making games in West Africa, people making games in places where there is no games industry, there is no AAA. Well, there is no AAA. That it's inspiring.
Yeah.
Right. It's just inspiring. You can't look at that and go, wow, they're just doing this because it just seems fun to them. No, they're doing this because they don't see another way of existing. And to me, that is always, just wow, right?
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, definitely. Just leading off of, how a lot of communities are really underrepresented and misrepresented by games media, like especially like Arabs and Muslims as a whole in the game industry. Like at best, they're underrepresented and at worst, grossly misrepresented. Do you feel that as a whole, that trend will be changing anytime in the near future? Because in a few months we have, you've talked about this a lot, but 6 Days in Fallujah got resurrected and brought back from the grave 10 years later. Like it was a mistake 10 years ago. Well, and it's a bad thing now still.
Right.
And it's not an anomaly, right? It's a greater trend in the game industry, right?
Right. I think things are getting better. And I think 6 Days in Fallujah is actually a great example of why things are getting better, right? When 6 Days in Fallujah was canceled 10 years ago, you know why it was canceled? It was canceled because the veterans that were represented in the game felt that war was not a thing for a video game. Mm-hmm. At no point did anybody care, even in the slightest bit, about the fact that we were shooting lots of innocent people, that we were shooting Arabs, that we were destroying Arab countries. That was not the problem. The problem was that the veterans, the US soldiers, they were unhappy with the fact that their struggles were being turned into a video game. And over the past decade, we've seen an incredible increase in understanding of the value of games and the narrative storytelling of games and the potential of games to communicate experiences. This time, the problem with 6 Days in Fallujah is that you're killing Muslims, you're killing Arabs, right? And even though we're not winning this one, that game is going to come out, and this game is going to be about murdering lots of people in an unjustified war without discussing why the war was unjustified, without discussing why what happened was evil. Even like just after the passing of Donald Rumsfeld, who engineered these things, who dreamed up weapons of mass destruction that weren't there to justify invading a country of millions, to the ground being so enriched with uranium from uranium depleted bullets that people are still being born with birth defects.
Yeah,
that we're not going to discuss. All we're going to do is shoot Arabs. And we're just going to assume that the reasons that the U.S. Army is there were probably justified, right? Like it's. I feel if you want to tell that story, and you want to tell it from a U.S. veteran's perspective, I'm okay with that. But what does it feel like as a veteran to come home, having done all the atrocities you've done, and then realize that the government that you were fighting for has lied to you? There are no weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah,
you can't leave that out of that story. You can't leave that out. Even though I believe that you can't tell that story without discussing the perspective of the Iraqis.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Even if you were telling it from a US perspective, this is not that story, right? The fact that that discussion is happening is different, right? The fact that the recent Call of Duty Modern Warfare had a female Arab character as a playable protagonist, that's a difference, right? And before that, we had Salzer in Infinite Warfare. Mm-hmm. And there are more. It's actually shocking to me how often it's the big AAA games that are now flipping on this a little bit. we're seeing more hopeful representation of Arabs, right?
Yeah.
Like a beautiful, futuristic Arab.
Also, some like both Tekken and Street Fighter have had Arab characters now, which was, they were both. Right. I mean, it was a big reveal to me when they were first unveiled a few years ago, because I mean, having someone with a Muslim name be, a fighter in one of the biggest fighting games out there was just mind blowing to me.
Yeah, they even made sure in Spider-Man PS4 to have hijabi characters, and I think they even had a billboard for halal food, if I'm not mistaken. So that was really cool to see. I mean, one of my favorite games right now. Just seeing that representation, it's incredible. So I definitely agree that the tide is turning.
I think it's, we're not quite there yet, but the amount of Arabs working in the games industry that feels safe to express when something is wrong is going up.
Yeah.
Other Arabs speaking up loudly, or whether they're just more safe in their environments, I can't answer that question on behalf of anybody else. I'm an independent. I just yell about things when I think they're wrong.
Yeah.
And nobody can fire me.
Yeah.
Right. So I just yell about things. But for a lot of people in the industry, I'm sensing in the industry that the topic has become something we can talk about, which that's how you shift culture, right? Not in one big moment, but in 1,000 little steps until at one point, the resistance breaks, and it's a wave, right? I think we're close to the wave. Maybe 6 days actually helps us in just showing what an anachronistic, horrifying thing this is. All we can really hope for, and I hate saying this as a game developer, but all we can really hope for is that the game comes out and everybody sees that it's bad.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I thought you said was interesting about you being an independent. I want to know a little bit more about what that's like, about the difficulties that come with being an indie game developer, and the benefits of not having to listen to a boss and being able to take the lead on your own.
You know what one of my favorite hobbies is?
What?
It's building Legos.
Oh yeah, I've noticed that on your Twitter. You've got a bunch of really cool stuff.
I got a lot of Legos. I realized a few years ago why I like Lego. Mm-hmm. Being an indie means that you're continuously making decisions where nobody can tell you whether they're the right decisions, and nobody can tell you whether it's going to work out.
Yeah.
It's continuously terrifying, right? Yeah. You wake up and you're working on this game, and if this game doesn't work, you can't pay rent, you can't pay anybody of the people you work with, and all the people that trusted you are going to get no money.
Yeah.
Right? And what you're doing is you're making a bet today, and I would love to make this bet with you if you want, but here's a bet. Here's the basic version of being an indie. Let's make a bet for $250,000 that in 2.5 years, people are still going to like Dark Souls.
Yeah. They definitely will.
I take that bet.
Yeah, for sure.
You might, but then you might see that in 6 months, somebody comes out with just a tiny twist on that formula that just changes things. And now instead of Dark Souls, they like that. Right? Yeah, sure. Dark Souls 1 is still pretty good, but I'm not going to pay money for that. We've got this game. This game is much better. So now let's do that bet, but then also add that they have to pay $30 for Dark Souls at that point. You're still going to do that?
Yeah, it depends.
Now, are you going to sell enough copies at $30 to make back that development budget?
Yeah, probably not as much if there's a better version.
So this is my day to day. It's just waking up and hoping that nobody else is making the game I'm making, right? And in the meanwhile, building a strategy to make sure that when I'm done with the game, that people will actually buy it, hopefully.
Yeah.
Right.
And then in the meanwhile, praying that the market doesn't go the wrong way, hoping that there's no other game launching on the same date as me.
Yeah.
Right. It's just everything is horrifying. Everything's scary. You sit there thinking about what name you're going to pick for a game, and you're just sitting there being like, what if it sounds too close to the other game? We delayed Super Crate Box, my first game, because it was going to launch on the same day as Super Meat Boy. That game had 9 letters in common with us. It was like, okay, we need to rename the game, or we need to come out earlier or later. Those are the 2 options.
Yeah.
But they were the bigger game. So we went with later, and it worked out. It was a good gamble. We said, well, in 2 days, everybody will be playing Super Meat Boy. and they might want like a small, simple thing to play. Well, if we bring it out before Super Meat Boy, people are only going to care about it for 2 days, and then Super Meat Boy comes out, and then people stop caring about our game. So later, could have backfired. Could have been that everybody was playing Super Meat Boy, and nobody would care at all about our game. But somehow it worked out.
Yeah.
Being an indie dev is like flipping a coin continuously, and if it ever lands the wrong way, hope it's not like the bad day where things really hurt.
Yeah.
The flip side is that it's all you.
Right.
It's all you and your team. It's all you and your people. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do if you can find a way to survive not doing it, right?
Yeah.
You don't have anybody that you need to report to except for the people you agree to report to. And as long as you can financially survive, as long as you can make sure that your team is safe, as long as you can make the game that you care about, I don't know, like maybe you get a little used to the coin flip, you know? Maybe you get a little used to waking up in the morning and go like, let's see what's up on Twitter and hope nobody has registered a game that looks very similar to mine. But so far so good. It's a bit of a rush, I will say.
Definitely. I mean, seems like you're a risk taker if you
it's
enjoy
funny.
Living that life.
It's a weird type of, because it's like, yes, it's risk taking. At the same time, it's also very calculated risk taking.
That's true.
Because you know, when you're a 2-person crew, if you mess up, really you only hurt the 2 of you, right? Yeah. But as soon as you're like 6 people working on a project, I'm okay with losing money myself. I wouldn't like to lose people's money when they need that money, right? One of the people we always worked with had a kid from the Vlambeer days. And it's like, I really hope this game is going to sell well enough to be able to like pay for Pampers for the kids, you know, like whatever they call them, diapers.
Yeah.
But it's a fun. There's something wonderful about the games industry where you can never get used to it. It's not like chess where you can learn the positions on the board and learn how to respond to certain types of pressure. It's just like you wake up. VR is a thing now.
Yeah.
We're going to try that. We're going to take some risk with it. We're not going to take some risk with it. If we take some risk, it's going to take a year to make a thing.
Yeah.
Would you bet on that? Or would you not bet on that?
I mean, if you told me like maybe 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have bet on it, because to me at that point it didn't seem like VR would be going anywhere significant in the next few years. But then if you ask me now, I probably would bet on it, because what I'm seeing is like before, none of my friends had VR headsets. Like, it was too expensive. It was too niche. You didn't really have any noteworthy games on it.
So,
but like now you have stuff like Half-Life Alyx and things like that. Beat Saber, you know, Amaan over here has a VR headset.
I've actually
5 years
got it
ago,
right here next to me. It is nice.
Yeah, I don't have one, but you know, like 2 out of 3 people in this in this call have them. So right now I would have taken that bet, but
that's funny because I'm the opposite. You told me 5 years ago to bet on VR, I'd be like, well, there's no quality stuff on it, right? I'm not competing with anybody. And if it doesn't work out, well, you know, can I curse?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Well, shit. Well, now if I want to make a VR game, I'm going to have to invest at least enough money to compete with Valve, which is 2 years of development time. So if it doesn't work out, that's like $500,000 down the drain.
Yeah.
So it's this weird thing where you're technically correct. You're the smarter person here, by far, because you're looking at it and you're like, there's a market here. But for me as an indie, the interesting thing has always been like, where's the market? Not yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're sort of creating your own market.
Because that's the only place I'm good at. I'm not good in places that already work super well, right? I'm not a competitor. I'm a builder. I like building things, and then when I build a thing, I like to move on. Right. I'm not a sustainer. I can't maintain things. That's not my strength. If I ever want to build something like that, I need people around me that are good at that.
Yeah.
Right.
Tell me to build something. Okay. There's nothing here yet. see what we can do with this cardboard box over here and see where we get.
Yeah, you definitely sound like an indie developer by everything you're saying. And everything that you're saying about indie development sounds so much like everything I've heard about tech startups over the years. The calculated risk taking, going where the market's not there, and making sure there's not any competition. It's exactly like that. And it also feels like with indie game development, they say like 9 out of 10 startups don't work out. I think with indie game development, it might actually be more than that. Because, yeah.
It's 99 out of 100. But the good news is that I think a lot of indies are adjusting what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There was this weird period. So 2010 to 2014, indie was growing.
Yeah.
And very frequently, if you made a hit game, you made good money. Yeah. Right? A lot of the big indies from now actually started back then. Whether you're looking at like a Bastion being a big deal, or Capybara Games growing, Mike Bithell, Vlambeer back in the days when that still existed. All of those studios sort of like arose in that period of time because it was relatively easy to make a game. Well, it was not easy to make a game, but the market was less saturated.
Right.
So we kind of got grandfathered in a very odd way, right? Like we were part of the space, and because we were part of the space, we got to grow along with the space. What I think is interesting, though, about indie now is you're seeing this sort of switch from people wanting to make a hit game to people just want to make the next game.
Right.
I think that's so much healthier. Because a lot of people were betting everything, like stories about like people that bet a mortgage, second mortgage, got a loan, stuff like that. And I'm just listening, I'm like, please don't do any of these things. Like, it's already risky when it's your own money. And I understand that for some people, that's the only way to get money. But if that's the only way to get money, then really you should not be doing this with money that depends on you.
Yeah.
Right? Get a publisher, get like something else. Like, risk rich people's money.
Yeah.
Right? Not your own. But the fact that there are more places to get money now, there are more grants, diversity grants, there's more opportunities to get your game funded, means that there's more space for creativity again. Because one thing that is scary about it to me is that I'm a programmer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not a startup person. I'm not an entrepreneur, but I sound a lot like him.
Yeah.
Right? Because over the past 10 years, I had to learn this stuff. Part of me wants to unlearn. Right? Part of me wants to just look at a game and go like, oh, that's cool. Let's make that.
Mm.
And you get the reflex, right? The reflex is, can I pay people?
Yeah.
If I do this, am I going to be ruining somebody's life? Am I going to be ruining somebody's opportunity to pay for rent next month?
Mm-hmm.
And it's this reflex. And I think now that I have a little bit of distance from Vlambeer, I'm trying to unlearn part of that. It's just hard because it's also the reality of it. Like in the end, rent is kind of a big deal.
Kind of important.
Right. And in an ideal world, none of us would have to pay for rent and worry about stuff if we could do what we want. But
somebody came up with an amazing game earlier on Twitter today where like everybody like together fights a giant smoke monster. And then when the smoke monster dies, the game ends. I was like, that's great. It will never make money, so nobody's going to fund this, so you can never make it. But I would play that. Yeah. I would go and like do an RPG and like strengthen my sword so I can be one of the 70,000 people that's going to hit the smoke monster.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll play that. If it's like 3 weeks of intense like doing this thing so we can kill the giant smoke monster, I'm in.
Yeah. It'd be really cool, but a lot of ideas don't work because in the back of everyone's mind is, we'll just pay the bills.
Right, and that definitely wouldn't, because you would have to spin up the entire infrastructure to support 70,000 consecutive players and then just throw that out again.
Yeah, right. I get exactly what you're saying. On a bit of a less on the, I guess, development side and more on the playing side of games, we would like to know what are some of your current favorite games and your all-time favorites, if it's possible to list those.
I think so. My current favorite is Flight Simulator. I can go very long, very short about it. I love that Earth is in a video game.
Yeah.
And it's accurate to such a degree that anybody can go outside of their house, look around, boot up the game, fly over that spot and go, yeah, it's pretty close.
Wow.
Right? It's not like some abstract understanding of Earth. This is Earth. My house is in it.
Yeah.
My apartment in Egypt is in it. Every person I've talked to, their house is in it. Your house is in it.
I've got to buy it now.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It is Earth. And the worst thing is you boot it up and it like syncs the weather to how the weather is now.
That is
the airplanes that are in the air are flying in the air in Flight Simulator. The winds are correct. Like everything is right.
Wow.
That's awesome and terrifying that we can do that right now.
I mean, that's insane to me because I used to play Flight Simulator games when I was like 7, 8. And, you know, they were pretty, like, at the time, they really impressed me. But to see how far it's gone since then, I mean, this is just like, what, 12 years later?
Right. 6 months ago, I flew from Montreal to Amsterdam. I had my laptop. I set Flight Simulator to the lowest settings. I booted up Flight Simulator in the seat, in the airplane. I loaded up a flight from Montreal to Amsterdam, and as the plane took off, I took off in Flight Simulator. And I flew the same route. And I swear to God, it was a perfect match. Cloud high, stars, light, darkness, sunset at the right time, sunrise at the same time. To the point where when I got the message in the game that I needed to start the descent, about 30 seconds later, our airplane started to descend.
Oh my God.
We landed with like a 12-minute difference in the end because I got a different approach assigned to me. So I had to fly a little longer. But
yeah,
that makes no sense. Like you take a screenshot out of the left window of the airplane and you take a photo out of the airplane of the window and you hold them side by side and you're like, yeah, I don't know which one the photo is.
Wow.
Right. It's preposterous.
Crazy.
So Flight Sim is a big one. I always play Destiny. Right.
Did you play the first Destiny as well?
Yeah, I played Destiny from beta.
Okay.
So
I played.
It's always been one character.
Which class do you play?
Titan.
Okay, cool. I started as a Titan as well. I played Destiny 1.
Right.
I never got into Destiny 2 because I just couldn't handle paying for all of the DLCs after a little while. I think in Destiny 1, I got past I got up to House of Wolves, and then after that I didn't pay for any of the DLCs, but
House of Wolves was after the Taken King. You played the Taken King.
Yeah, I played Taken King. Taken King was incredible. It was so good. Yeah, and I remember. Do you remember the Gallahorn in Destiny 1?
Yep.
Yeah. So, Umar, for context, the Gallahorn was the rarest. Like, it was one of the rarest rocket launchers in the game. It was legendary, and everybody needed it because nobody would play a raid with you if you didn't have it. Because it was amazing. Like, you could take down bosses so quickly with it. It was super, super good. And there was this guy who had a shop who would sell legendaries every week, or they might have been exotic. I don't even remember. But he would sell them every week. Exotics, yeah. He would sell them every week, and the Gallahorn never, ever went into the shop. And I swear to you, the week that I got the Gallahorn, finally, after like a year of playing the game, I was so satisfied. The week after that, he sells it in the shop, and I was like, "Oh my God!" I waited a whole year.
So we got the Gallahorn on the same day then.
What? No, what? Oh, you got it that week as well?
I got it the week before Xur sold it. Xur was this vendor that would only show up over the weekend with rare stuff. I got two drops in a row in the week before Xur sold it. And I was like, I have two now. And then he sold it. I'm like, everybody has one.
Everybody has one. I was the second to last friend in my group that got it. And then I had this friend, the day that Xur had it in the shop, he was like, "Oh my God, Amaan, I have the Gallahorn now." And I was like, "What? You got it like a week after me?" He was like, "No, it's in Xur's shop." I was like, "No way, dude."
Oh my God. Yep. I just love that. The thing that Destiny does that no other game does for me, Destiny is my end of day game. It's not a game I want to intensely play. I don't want to finish Destiny. I don't want to be the best at Destiny. I just want to boot up Destiny, shoot some stuff, punch some things, throw some grenades, do a cool super thing, and then go to bed.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't want to win. I don't want to excel. I just want to like hang out with some friends and shoot some stuff.
It is a great game to just play with your friends and have a good time.
Oh, It's so good, and it's never big enough that you have to explore too much. There's never too much to do. There's always a lot to do, but there's never too much to do. You can just kind of pick and choose what you want to do. I feel like they finally figured out storytelling, so they know how to tell a story. So it's getting there. It's in a good spot now.
Okay. Yeah.
But you need to have time for a game like that.
Definitely.
I just finished Mass Effect Legendary Edition.
I've never actually played Mass Effect.
Oh,
I've heard too many good things about Mass Effect to not play it now.
So those games are very special to me because the original one came out in 2007 or 8. I was not yet in Game Design University. In fact, I might not have been aware that Game Design University existed at that point. In 2010, when the second one came out, I had done 2 years of Game Design University and dropped out and started Vlambeer. I was a game developer now. But I'd never done anything good yet. When the final one came out in 2013, Ridiculous Fishing was about to come out. We were about to score our first major hit, but we were already an established indie game studio at that point. We had gotten IGF nominations. We were like excelling. Like we'd done a published game, the first published game for Devolver Digital, or one of the first published games for Devolver Digital. Like so much had happened, and then 3 came out. So in that period of time where my entire life flipped upside down, the one thing that stayed stable is I wanted to know how the story of Shepard ended. Right.
You sort of grew up alongside Mass Effect.
Yeah.
I grew up alongside Mass Effect. So to play that the other day was genuinely, it was emotional. It was very odd because like in Destiny, I get really attached. I'm a sentimental person. I get really attached to my character. So I've never made a second Destiny character because it feels unfair to my other Destiny character.
Wow.
Right. That's my character. I've played everything with my character. I can't not be that character. That's me in Destiny.
Try the Hunter class. It's so much fun.
They just kind of flip around a bit, and then I punch them. I just punch them.
Okay.
You just press the punch button.
Oh, the Titans.
No, Warlocks, they do like sparkly things, and then I punch them. It's great. Titans are great.
Yeah, Titans are the best.
I just like I like their lore. There's this one lore piece where there's one Titan that throws another Titan off a giant wall so hard that they punch somebody at the bottom of the wall. And that's like actual Destiny lore.
Wow, that's
because there were 2 Titans that just decided to use the other. There was a Titan that decided to use the other one as a projectile, and the other one went like, "Well, might as well punch when I land, right?"
That sounds like
I like that.
Yeah.
Mass Effect is very special, I think, because there are 3 games, and I have this firm belief that the second game in any series is always the best. Because the first one, if the first one is good enough to warrant the second one, right? Mm-hmm. The first one probably didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
They just decided to make a thing and they kind of figured out what they were doing, but they probably didn't have time to do it right. They didn't have time to do it proper. They didn't make the game they wanted to make. Then in the second one, they have the resources and the time to make the game they wanted to make.
Yeah.
And then they do all the cool stuff. And then, they're going to make a third one.
Yeah.
And Mass Effect is exactly that. Mass Effect is like a microcosm of how game development goes. One is like this weird RPG. Have you played Dragon Age?
I played a little bit.
So Mass Effect 1 is Dragon Age if you replace the swords with guns.
Okay.
That's basically it, right? Answer questions, level up your character according to like 5,000 different little things, and then that's it. Mass Effect 2 is a cover shooter. But not a good one. It's pretty solid, but what makes Mass Effect 2 stand is that they nailed the narrative.
Yeah.
Right, that's what everyone talks about for Mass Effect. They always talk about the narrative and less about the gameplay itself.
Yeah.
Mass Effect 3 was genuinely a pretty good cover shooter, but by then they had to wrap up the story because it was the last one. So all of the cool stuff in Mass Effect 2 of like making these choices that would impact and how it would work out and what will happen in the future. In 3, it was like, oh, that's how it ends.
Yeah.
Right. So it's this beautiful microcosm of what happens when you make 3 games in a row. Emotional for me.
Yeah. I was just thinking about how you said the second game is usually the best one, but I was thinking about all these other game series. I was just thinking the Arkham series. Yeah, City was the best one.
I liked Arkham Knight had the best story, I'd say, but the gameplay was not as good as City.
I mean, yeah, they They put the Batmobile in too many places. I'm sorry.
That was fine. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that second game theory holds true for Hollow Knight, because Hollow Knight 2 is coming out very soon, and the first one was incredible. So if Hollow Knight 2 is even better, it could be the greatest game of all time.
I'm pretty sure the theory holds. It holds strong for AAA. For indie, it's a bit hit or miss because it depends on what kind of resource they threw into the first one.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Have you played Hollow Knight?
There's game. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Harder than I thought it would.
It looks like it's not going to be that hard, and then
you're like, that's cute.
It's
cute.
All these cartoonish kids. That's what I thought with the Cuphead. Cuphead looked like fun, and I played it, and it was upsetting.
Cuphead is frustrating. I'm glad we're past this trend of like really hard stuff for now.
Yeah,
I like hard games. Don't get me wrong. I make arcade games, but also
I don't really need that all the Super Crate Box yesterday. Actually,
okay, yeah. So Super Crate Box was tough. I got decent at Luftrausers though. That was really fun. I think my high score was like 5,000 or 6,000. Or no, I was at 5,975.
That is honestly not a bad score.
Yeah, and it was within my first hour of playing, so I'd take it.
Nice. Yeah, Super Crate Box for us, we always said it's not a hard game, it's a short game. That's it. You just die pretty quickly. And as long as you had a good time, we're good.
I did.
We don't care whether you get a high score.
It was great.
Luftrausers was a little uneven. Like sometimes you just had runs where you just got like in an infinite loop of scoring points. You're like, okay, I guess you win.
It was cool. I think Gun Gods was also one of my. That one was just like I just felt so cool, just maneuvering around the map and just like bang bang at everything that I see. It was incredible.
It was where we got to test our rule that if you're making a first-person shooter, and the shotgun is not the best thing in the video game, you're not making a good first-person shooter.
The shotgun was amazing, man. Everything I was literally just. Everything that I had learned from any other first-person shooter, that's what I was doing. I was just like hiding behind a corner when any enemy shot at me, and then I would peek out with my shotgun, bang, and then peek back out, and it was just amazing, man.
We designed gun. It's funny, Gun Gods actually started as Nuclear Throne. A lot of people don't know that.
Wow.
But
really?
we tried to make a roguelike, but people just kept running towards the exit.
Yeah.
So we just went like, we can't figure this out. We'll just make it a first-person shooter and like go from there. And it was actually JW came up with that projection trick that allows us to use effectively 2D sprites as 3D boxes.
Oh, wow.
And then we designed it around the idea of like ballet with guns. Right? Okay. It's like a choreography. Every level is sort of like a path through the level that is good.
Yeah, that reminds me of that stage in BioShock. You know what I'm talking about? What's his name? There's this one scene in BioShock where like you get a spotlight on you and this ballet music starts playing.
So we were very much about like the movement, about the weapons, and we just wanted to make sure that when you did it right, it felt right.
Yeah.
Right? Like you could tell when you were playing Gun God right because you were moving, shooting, moving, shooting, breathe.
Mm-hmm. The elevator was the breathe part for the most part.
Right, that was
amazing.
Recently, there was, if you like Gun Gods, there's a game that came out called Post Void.
Really?
That if you haven't played it, Post Void is like Gun Gods. If Gun Gods was even more confident about being what it is, it's like every level is 30 seconds. If you don't kill stuff, you die.
Really? That is.
And you have like 4 seconds to kill the next thing every time.
Okay.
It's incredible. It's also trippy. If you have any problems with like light sensitivity or like flashing lights, do not touch this game. Do not look up this game. Do not Google this game. It is like the hardest shooter I've ever played.
Really? I'll have to check that out.
Just absolutely ridiculous.
Okay. Very interesting.
Love it though.
Yeah. I know that we've strayed a little bit away from your favorite games and more into the games that you developed. But I have to know about the experience of. So I saw that you live streamed the development of Nuclear Throne on Twitch. Why and how did it go? And I mean, it's just so much that I want to know about that.
It's one of the things that I always loved about Vlambeer is that it was a statement studio. Mm-hmm. We didn't just make games; we said things, right? And we said things, and when we said things, we meant those things. Super Crate Box was a free game in a time where we really should be charging, but nobody knew us, and we took our branding and marketing very seriously in a time when no indies cared about branding or marketing, right?
Yeah.
Serious Sam, the Random Encounter was a game with a publisher when nobody was doing publishers. Luftraus was for PlayStation when nobody was doing PlayStation. Like, everything we did always had to mean something. And I think at that time, when we were starting on Wasteland Kings, as it was called originally, there was this trend of doing humble bundle fundraisers, right? And for one of them, Mojang, the people that did Minecraft, actually said, okay, we're going to do a live jam, but we're also going to live stream it. And the team had such a good time with that we said, okay, what if we just develop a game fully on a live stream? Not just a jam prototype, but like actually fully develop it. And then what if people can play it?
Yeah.
What if people can play it every week? What if people can just watch us do things, tell us what they want, and then we do or not do that and release it every week? So we did. And it was great and awful. And I would absolutely recommend nobody ever do this, but it was also awesome. It was, for the team we were 6 people. We did 2 live streams a week and an update every week, which basically meant my week looked like this, right? Monday, get ready and do a little bit of work. Tuesday, stream, which means that we couldn't do like big stuff. We could only do small stuff. The stream enjoyed watching us do weapons, watching us do character, watching us do levels. They didn't enjoy bug fixing. They didn't enjoy bigger structural changes. That was just like you're just staring at a person staring at a screen.
Yeah.
Right.
So
you had the
only short-term stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Then Wednesday we actually got to work.
Okay.
Thursday, another stream. Friday, wrap up the build, make sure it's stable, make sure it's not deleting people's hard drive. Saturday, push this live. Mm-hmm. Sunday, bug fix whatever went wrong on Saturday, or if there is nothing to bug fix, take a day off. Then Monday, start that cycle again. Now do that for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And you can understand that the first month after Nuclear Throne was finished and we wrapped up development on it, I woke up every Saturday in a panic.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have a build. We don't have a build. Is there a build? Oh, no, we're done. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It was too much. If I would do that again, I would do 1 stream every week and I would do an update every 2 weeks. Just slow the pace a little, get some more time to do work. But at the same time, nobody had done it before. And the sense of community was unreal. Like, community management is a job now. Mm-hmm. Right? Back then, indies didn't have community managers. That was new. Like the whole idea of like having to manage groups of people. We had moderators.
Yeah.
That's what we called it, moderators, right? But from it grew the science and understanding of, okay, no, these communities need to be managed, right? People need to talk to them. There needs to be a flavor. There needs to be a taste. There needs to be a feeling to a community, a sense of belonging. That takes more than a forum. I think a lot of indies just sort of accidentally did that, but it's just too much work.
Yeah.
While you're also making a game. We were accidentally doing community management, and it was so good. The people, the streamers, the people doing weekly update videos, people with feedback. There was one person who went by Flurry, who just became like sort of like a prankster joke in the community. Like everybody got their name and their role, and there were heroes and there were villains, and there was a story in that development. It's really lovely when you make games. When you make games, the thing you hope for more than anything is that somebody will play it. Yeah. Right? That somebody will care. Somebody, just anybody, gives a shit. right? That's it. That's all you hope for. Yeah, you hope for money and you hope for people to like it and you hope for reviews. But honestly, if I could see one person get it and care for it, then that makes me happier than any of the other things. Like the other things are more necessary for my survival, so those are very good. Don't get me wrong, but having that live as you're developing a game was just something. It was special. It was like a boost every week. You just see the response, and you're like, oh, people like that. People picked up on that. Oh, they noticed that change. Didn't expect them to notice that fast. It had its downsides, people get entitled. People get like they don't understand what you're trying to do as a developer always. We had a character named Chicken, and Chicken's ability was that the game would go in slow motion.
Right.
And everything would go in slow motion except for the rate of fire on enemies. So if you slowed the game down, our abilities were you could always use them as much as you want.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. We weren't doing cooldowns. We thought that was weird. If you have Superman, why can I only use my laser eyes every 30 seconds? Yeah. Right? That's the worst Superman. This is like, what is your eyes overheating? Like, what is happening? So we thought if we're going to do abilities, they need abilities that have a natural disadvantage to them. So for the slow-mo, we slowed everything down besides enemy rate of fire, which meant that if you use the slow-mo too much, the screen just got absolutely blanketed with bullets.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody's movement was slower. Everything was moving slower. Everything was going slower, except for how many bullets were getting shot. So you would just harm yourself with it. The problem was that Nuclear Throne was really a game about momentum. Game about movement, keep moving, move into an enemy room, move into like the experience the spear after a few seconds, so you move into that room. Yeah, if you're in that room, you're fighting any other enemies, so you're dodging, you're walking, you're shooting. Oh, you're out of ammo. Now I got to grab that ammo crate. Oh, there's more experience there. Now I got to go there. Oh, there's more enemies there. So it was a game about momentum, move, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And here you had Chicken, whose entire thing was to slow the game down. And people loved it because it was a great ability, but it was not right. It was wrong. You could feel like it was wrong. Yes, it worked and it was great, but it was wrong. So we changed that ability to Chicken being able to throw weapons. People hated it. We got so much anger and so much disappointment from people. People were talking about how we didn't understand what made the game great anymore. And then 4 weeks later, nobody cared anymore and everybody was used to the throw, right? Like,
that's the internet.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's so wild. All of this stuff is so wild. But game development is such a weird job because everybody thinks they can do it.
Yeah.
Including the people that are doing it. But the only people that really believe they can't do it are the people that are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's the weirdest thing. Like the more people, the better people get at game development, the more humble they are about game development.
Yeah, I mean, Amaan was actually doing a game jam a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, I did one of those, so I know how difficult your job is. It is incredibly difficult. I mean, we had like 48 hours, but I also realized that I didn't know how to do anything during those 48 hours, and it was intense. It was fun, and I cannot imagine that schedule that you had for 3 years. While streaming it and having to listen to community feedback. I mean, I got like one comment from someone on the Game Jam forum who said that like our game sucked for some reason. I mean, there were many reasons that it did, but he listed out one of them, and I was like, well, that kind of hurt a little bit, but I can't imagine taking that feedback from as many people as you had in the community for 3 years straight.
Right. Yeah, you get... People always say that game developers need to grow a thicker skin. Game developers have some thick skin. Like, it's part of our job to hear why our game is bad. Yeah. That's actually very exciting to hear why your game is bad. Yeah. We just really wish it came without, death threats and people telling us how we should do our job and like people telling us that we don't know what we're doing. We know what we're doing. We're not always right.
Yeah.
Right.
But we have like procedures and systems and things we came up with to be right as often as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's it made me respect a lot of other jobs a lot more, I must say. Because now I look at things and I'm like, how does a boat work? Not like, how does a boat float? Because I'm also curious about how a boat is built. That also sounds weird. But how does it work? Like the logistics of getting a container on a ship and then off a ship. Like,
Yeah.
how do you does every container have like a unique number? And if so, who's in charge of those numbers? How do you apply for a number? Who keeps track of where which number is? And like, is there like rules as to which numbers can do what? I recently learned that there's a type of ship size called a Suez class freighter, because the ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal.
Oh yeah, that was a big thing.
Yeah.
The width of that canal defines a class of super freighter.
Wow.
Didn't know that. So I looked it up. There's apparently another canal that has that same thing, where there's another canal width that defines ship width somewhere else. And depending on ship classes, you can load a certain amount of containers. And I'm just like, everything I've come to learn that everything that seems simple is hard.
Yeah.
Right.
And everything that people look at is like, oh, that must be complicated. It's actually pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
It's really weird how it works. But I think it's that thing where the hardest parts of any jobs are invisible. And if the hardest part seems visible, that people quickly assume that it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like podcasting.
Right,
I thought podcasting would be really hard, and it's not as simple as it looks, but it's also pretty simple.
Yeah, the basics of it,
right?
The things that you would think, like you said, the things that you would think are difficult are rather simple, and the things that you would think are easy are a bit more difficult than you would think. Like I thought editing it and throwing everything together would be the easiest thing in the world, and then I realized, audio is a lot more complicated than I realized.
Why is volume relative? I have no idea. What are LUFS? What is loose? Like, what is happening? I'm just crying at my editing software.
I'm sitting here on Premiere Pro, like, what's going on? What is this noise in the background? How do I get rid of this? I already used something to get rid of background noise. Nothing makes sense.
Right. And it was volume that broke my brain when I realized that there's no real way of measuring volume in a podcast besides like relative to
I don't know what. Like,
something.
What is zero? Where is zero?
Right. I've just learned I put it at 18. That works. 18 or 19. I saw that somewhere in a Twitter thread or in a post. I use that as like a LUFS number. And then it renders my podcast at the same volume every week. Took me weeks to figure that out.
Huh. Okay. What software do you use to edit?
I use Audacity mostly.
Okay.
That's what I use to record my own audio.
Right.
All right. Well, we have a video that comes up as well. So I just use Premiere Pro for everything. Right.
Premiere seems like a good one. I use After Effects to render videos for hours, which was also harder than I thought. Who would have thought?
Yeah. Right. It's very intuitive, but at the same time, there's a lot that goes into it.
Right. I love that though. The more I've learned about the world, the more I've traveled, the more I've met cultures and foods and music and stuff, the more you realize that everybody's just kind of making things up as things happen. And then these super intricate structures and procedures just appear. It just happens, right? Just like in the games industry, I made press kit as a free tool to make press kits, right? And I made it for me. And then a friend of mine said, can I use it? And I said, like, sure, I'll put it online. And that was literally the industry standard.
Wow.
And it's like, why? And it's like, no, I just happened to want to not. I wanted to be lazier. And then it turned out everybody wanted to be lazier. So we all just kind of agreed that this is the right way of being lazy.
That's how some of the craziest innovation, some of the most amazing inventions have come about is when people realize like, oh, this could be done a lot easier. This could be much cooler. Smartphones and OS on your computer came about simply because people realized, oh, there should be an easier way to access all of these different applications on your computer. And a smartphone, you could access the internet in your pocket. And all of a sudden, because people wanted easier solutions, they weren't even thinking about all of the money that they could make. They just thought that, hey, this could be something that's really cool, and I want it. Other people might want it as well.
Right.
It's incredible.
Yeah, no, that's literally what happens most of the time. But I think that's what I love about the world is that it's this weird mix of local challenges that go global, these global issues that become local, these intricate networks of people trusting each other, distrusting each other, working with each other, working against each other. And then somehow it kind of works most of the time, you know?
we're all just trying our best here, and
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that needs to get fixed, but it's nice to think that almost everything in your life is the result of somebody going, "What if?" Right? Yeah. The desk that your computer is on was designed by somebody. Mm-hmm. They had a meeting about the shape of that desk, and they talked about it. Or if you build the desk yourself, you sat down and you selected the pieces of wood that went into it. Yeah. Right? The lights that were used, the camera, the microphone, the computer, every button on the screen is like built on like years of research. Like the start button being in the bottom the bottom corner. Mm-hmm. That's a UI law called Fitts law, which says that the size of an object on a screen and the distance of the object on the screen relative to your mouse cursor or input device makes it easier or harder to click a thing. So if it is bigger, it's easier to click on. And if it's closer, it's easier to click on, which makes total sense. Yeah. Right? This is an actual UI law. And the reason that start button is in a corner is what happens when you throw your mouse to the bottom left of your screen. Huh. Stops on the button.
Yeah.
So that button, because it's on two edges, is actually infinite in two directions, to the left and to the bottom, which makes it almost impossible to miss. Also explains why that X is in the top right. Right?
Wow. Huh.
Just a law, just a UI law. People argued about this, discussed this, and then this guy named Fitts came up with that law and wrote it down, and people still use that to this day. Everything on the edge is easier to reach on a computer screen. Then iPads came along and touchscreens. Fitts law didn't apply.
Yeah. Wow.
Wild. Like we're just building and building on knowledge on top of knowledge on top of knowledge, and every now and then somebody pushes just hard enough against the edge that everything changes. That's my favorite part of everything.
That's how the world works at this point. And it's just as crazy in terms of art and history and everything that we look at and feel some emotion towards, as it is with technology and game development and podcasting. Everything is so niche and affected by people that it's inspired by communities, like you said, global and local, and then it becomes what it is, and they can be incredibly unique to the point where nobody likes it, or to the point where everyone realizes, whoa, I had no idea that this was something I was interested in, and I didn't realize that I could feel this emotion because of this art. And that's just the way that the world works.
Yeah, it's really wild. It's really interesting that everything has a reason.
Yeah.
It makes me happy. I don't know. I think I've always seen the world that way, but it makes me really happy to think about what would happen if something was a little different. I often wonder what would have happened if the original platformers, like of Super Mario, right? What would have happened if they were made in the Arab world?
Yeah.
Would we be moving left in platformers?
Huh.
Do you think reading direction has something to do with why we move left to right?
Yeah.
In platformers?
Everything would have been going left.
Maybe that actually would have maybe everything would have been the exact same, except we will be moving left.
Huh. In an alternate universe.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's stuff like that where it's just like everything is such a I think it's a mindset that you need to have as an entrepreneur, is that everything is chaos.
Yeah.
Right. As soon as you start thinking there's order to anything, that there's reason to anything beyond being at the right time, at the right place, and getting lucky, right? Putting the work in and making sure that when the opportunity is there, that you have the opportunity to use that opportunity. Beyond that, it's nonsense, right? Whether somebody spilled a coffee on somebody else's shirt today will probably define more about your life than anything else that you try to do for this entire day, right? And a lot of people say, like, isn't that nihilistic? Like, doesn't that mean that nothing matters? I think that means everything matters.
Right.
It's the opposite. We just don't know which things matter yet.
Yeah, because nothing is really around us, and pretty much everything that affects us isn't really in our control. All we can really do is just react to what happens.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because I can plan to go to the grocery store in 2 hours, but you know what?
Right.
Maybe I'll feel tired in 2 hours and just play Red Dead for
Right.
the rest of the night.
Yeah.
Then maybe you'll go to the grocery store and you might get really lucky, or you might get really unlucky, and we don't know what's going to happen. Like
Exactly.
maybe you'll stumble across something on the street that changes your life forever.
Yeah.
Or, you know, maybe somebody is paying attention and changes your life forever in worse ways, right?
I mean, yeah, because like even this episode of the podcast, I mean, if I hadn't gotten bored a couple of weeks ago and sent you a message on Twitter, this wouldn't be happening.
I think it actually was a result of me being late to our editing. I was going to show up at a specific time, and if I was on time, we might not be here today.
Right. And the reason you were not on time is probably something mundane that you've probably forgotten by now, because it wasn't important, but it still led to this conversation, right?
Yeah, and here we are.
To me, a lot of people go like, then nothing matters because we can't control anything. To me, it means the opposite. It just means that every choice we make leaves an impact on the world that forever changes it.
Right.
Because
even if it's whether we're getting out of bed with our left foot or right foot, or whether we're leaving the house like with a brisk pace or a slow pace, or everything.
Yeah. Because you might not realize what that impact is immediately or even ever, but there's going to be some impact.
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing about, because, I mean, as Muslims, we believe everything happens for a reason, right? And then you realize everything large and small happens for some reason that could affect something that you have no idea. And that is why, like, we need to be content with, the things that might go wrong in our lives, the little things that bother you sometimes. And then, you just realize that everything happens for a reason.
I'm pretty sure that inshallah is one of the words that has most strongly affected my outlook on life, because I love the chaos of the word. Because inshallah means all of it. It means yes, right? Yeah. If you're two friends and you say like, let's meet again next week, and the other person says inshallah, it's like yes. It also means maybe.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not sure. Hopefully. It also means hopefully not. And it also means absolutely not.
Yeah.
Right? It means all of those things at the same time. And it's not even a change of intonation or anything. Right. My dad says, Rami, go clean your room, back in the days. And I'd say, inshallah.
Yeah.
That's a no, Allah has nothing to do with it. Go clean your room. Right.
Yeah.
Well, if it's two friends saying it, you say inshallah exactly the same way, but everybody knows it means yes. And I think the beauty of that word is the encapsulation that everything is in our control, but nothing is in our control.
Yeah.
Right. What is in control is our hopes, our intent, our wishes to do things. And then part of it is outside of our control. Right. Part of it is not ours, even if we might want to. And maybe our intent doesn't matter that much when it comes to that. Beyond that, the intent is what we communicate to others. And what our intents give people hope. It gives things purpose. So, I was always taught that if you want to learn Arabic, the three words for an Egyptian you need to learn are IBM, which is inshallah, bukra, and ma'alish. Inshallah for, if God's willing. Bukra for tomorrow, which means, sorry, it's not going to work out today. And ma'alish is too bad, right?
Yeah.
If you know those three words, you can find your way through most of Arab culture, right? So, going to hang out tomorrow, inshallah. Okay, and then you say, and then when? Bukra. And then bukra, you say ma'alish, and then you're good. It's a very funny thing, but inshallah, I think is the most critical. It's the same thing, the same way that if we're talking religion, Surat al-Kafirun for me was like very defining in how I see the world. And I think for a lot of Muslims it is, because the Quran is ordered on length of surah, which means that as a kid, learning your first surahs means you start at the back of the Quran. Somebody yells at you for opening the Quran for the wrong side. Then you open the Quran from the right side, but you still go all the way to the back to learn the shortest ones, right?
Yeah.
Al-Kafirun basically goes, say to those who do not believe, I do not believe what you believe. You do not believe what I believe. I won't believe what you believe, and you won't believe what I believe. So to you, your faith, and to me, my own. And I've always thought that was the most beautiful expression of faith that you could possibly have. It's like, yo, you do you, I do me. let's not bother each other too much about these things. If you don't get in my way, I don't get in your way.
Yeah.
Khalas, that's it, right? We're good. For me, it has always made it so confusing, all of these conflicts and things about religion. And I realized that they're not about religion, they're about people.
Yeah.
Right. Quran is pretty clear about it. Like, faith is between you and Allah.
Mm-hmm.
So that other person has nothing to do with you and Allah.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's been a good guiding star. That surah has been a very good guiding star for me. The same way, inshallah, has been a good guiding stone for me as a Muslim.
Yeah.
And then the many Muslims I've met and realizing the difference between them, the things they have in common, how intertwined culture and religion have become, and how they're not the same thing, but how seeing the difference between them can be really hard for a lot of people. Yeah. I think all of those things have been really fascinating for me as a Muslim, as a visible Muslim, and as a person that has frequently had to represent all Muslims in the games industry as the only visible one.
I think, definitely. If you're a visible Muslim in the West, you sort of always have to act as a representative for other Muslims.
Definitely condemn all those terrorist attacks, all of them, like every single one, for now and forever. Anyway, can all the other people also condemn all the bad things their people do, or is it only us that have to do that?
Why don't?
I'm just like, I was here for a sandwich.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's horrifying. Like, all the horrible, there's so much horrible stuff in the world. It's just very odd that when it comes to being a visible Muslim, you're often asked to apologize. And I don't apologize for being Muslim. I also don't apologize for whatever stuff that those people did. Like, if somebody does something horrible, take it up with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that. Ask them to apologize.
Right. I was not involved in any of this.
Yeah.
I would probably tell them that they're terrible people.
Yeah. And it's incredible. Like, I think I mentioned this even in our last episode, but one of the most refreshing experiences that I had in college was I had to go pray every day in this one room. And it was, like this small area in like a corner of a student government room. And every time I would come in, I would just let them know, like, hey, I'm just going to pray over here. And the day that I came in and let them know, and they were like, hey, you don't have to let us know every single day. You can just go and pray. Like, that's your space. You can do it. Like, it's like you don't have to ask for permission. And it's like you mentioned, like, we shouldn't have to apologize. And so just in that way, it's like, it's not like I didn't have permission to go over there. I was simply just letting them know so that it didn't maybe seem weird, or maybe because I didn't want them to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, yes. I think what you were talking about, the thing about feeling like you have to ask permission.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's very defining for the Muslim experience, because a lot of what we do in the West, at least, is questioned. Yeah. Right. It's seen as other, it's seen as risky, it's seen as dangerous, down to like some of the most common phrases we use, Allahu Akbar.
Yeah.
Right. People fear. Well,
try saying that on a plane.
Right. Try anywhere in public.
Anyway.
Even though it's a very normal thing, Bismillah.
Yeah.
Right. People know the thing from a Queen song.
Yeah.
But they don't know what it means, and they're a little worried about it.
Yeah.
Praying, Ramadan, Eid. I find that people are curious, but it still comes with the expectation that we explain it.
Right.
Right. I hope that shifts. I really do. And I think it does, but it's hard to say because it goes so slow, right? Sometimes I wish I could like jump 50 years into the future and then jump back. Yeah. Right? Because I don't really want to, I don't want to do the thing where I disappear for 50 years, and I don't want to Captain America this. Because I like all the people I know and I like the world as I know it, but I would just like to know what has changed. Right. What has changed in such a way that I can't see because it went so gradual. But if you go back 20, 30 years, when I was born, and you look at the world then and you compare it to how the world is now, like, what did change? Like, did it get worse? Did it get better? Like, what happened? I mean, the internet is pretty great, but what else happened? Is the
Yeah.
internet great? I don't know if the internet's great.
It's debatable.
Yeah.
Good and bad.
Yeah, good and
Yeah.
bad. I think that's the case with a lot of different things. And I mean, I was just telling Umar like today or yesterday, I was like, if you had told me 2 years ago the things that would be happening in my life right now, I would have told you crazy that I would be sitting here on a podcast with Rami Ismail. I would have been like, what? That's absurd. And
Right.
alhamdulillah, here we are. And it's crazy to think. And of course, there are good and bad things about what has happened in the last 2 years of my life and the last 20 years of our lives and in
Right.
the last 50 years of the world. But like we've talked about, everything has a reason for it, right? And the way that things ended up, I mean, there's no mistake for the reason that we're all here. They're the things that ended us up here. And like you said, that is the beauty of the universe. So yeah, the internet's good and bad. Yeah, the 30 years from now, everything leading up to this moment, some good things have happened and some bad. And we can probably expect that to be the case over the next 50 years. But it's exciting and terrifying, and that is not just the Muslim experience, but the human experience as a whole.
Right.
And
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I do think the having to explain it is an interesting one, but I guess that's true for any person in a culture that isn't the local culture. It just happens to be that the Western one is very prevalent.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like a Western person wouldn't really have to explain their culture and their ideas in the same way. Have to, like a Western person in, let's say, Egypt or the UAE or Saudi wouldn't have to explain their culture in the same way I might have to here. Like they're like,
I've watched Friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah. That's good. I kind of understand. No, it's an example I use frequently because a lot of game developers, even by people made outside of the US, will still set their game in the US.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't have to explain everything. You don't have to explain. If you make a game about drinking coffee, it's easier to make it in Seattle than in Jakarta, even if you're based in Jakarta. Because you put it in Jakarta, you have to explain Jakarta, you have to explain the economy, you have to explain the prices, you have to explain the context. If you put it in Seattle, it's just Seattle.
Yeah, that's why every disaster takes place in New York.
I've seen Dwayne Johnson like rescue those cities 100 times. Like it's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you're taking place in Karachi. Where's Karachi?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What country is it?
The only time there's ever a foreign setting is when. Yeah.
Do we have to put a yellow filter?
Right.
There's always a yellow filter, and then
someone has to be screaming in the background.
Someone speaking Arabic comes in. Every single time there's a yellow.
They're
filter.
not quite speaking Arabic though. It's like it sounds like Arabic. There's somebody in the background going like,
It's like that's not what the adhan is.
It's like that's not. You can go any Arab city in the world and just record 5 times a day. How did you get this wrong?
Yeah.
Somebody pointed out the other day that there still has not been a major Hollywood movie that has had an adhan in it.
Wow.
And I thought that was wild.
Yeah.
But it turns out the closest was Kingdom of Heaven.
Yeah, that's my mom tells me that's like the only decent representation of Muslims in Hollywood.
Right. Wow. And even there, they get it pretty wrong.
Yeah.
So it's kind of impressive. It's a non-negative historical representation of Islam with really poor representation of our rituals. So like the praying is like random people on a beach with like 20 meters between them praying. It's so historically, that would not be the right direction. Also, we'd be standing like shoulder to shoulder, foot to foot. Right?
They were social distancing earlier.
Right. Right. That must have been it. But yeah, just the fact that there's not been an adhan in a major Hollywood movie, it blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Blew my mind. I was like, that can't be right. There's so many movies set in the Arab world. Somebody must have had at some point. I mean,
just recording. I'm sure the adhan randomly came in the background at some point while they're filming.
They would have to edit it out, not in. Like it would be hard to not have it in there. And somehow,
did you ask a Muslim person? Was there anyone Muslim on set that would have known? Like, how do you get that wrong?
I just love when they're trolling. I just love when Arabs or Muslims start trolling Hollywood creators by like doing ridiculous stuff. There's an actor who would frequently add like, anti-imperialist like statements in their Arabic, and I just kind of hope the directors would have noticed graffiti with like political phrases or like jokes, stuff like that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I just love that.
oh yeah, you started isitarabic.com, I think. Is that what it's called?
So I started isitarabic.com,
Yeah.
and then my friend Ramzi Nasser started notarabic.com. So Is It Arabic explains how to do it right. Not Arabic is a list of shame of everybody who got it wrong.
All right. Yeah, because everywhere with Arabic writing in Western properties, pretty much they do it wrong. They either don't join the letters, they do it backwards, they do both.
Yeah.
They
a 3-year-old could correct them.
I'm just like, just use Google. Even Google Translate does a better job, man.
But it's the thing, they copy paste from Google Translate into Photoshop and have never had to think about the fact that your text might break if you copy paste.
Yeah.
Because in English that can't happen. In the Latin alphabet, that doesn't happen. You copy paste the letters appear. They might have some formatting issues. There might be, it might be bold, it might be a weird font, but it's the same words. Right. Sometimes if you copy paste something and there's weird characters in it, right? Weird characters being characters with diacritical marks or accents or stuff like that. Then it might turn into that little square. That's the weirdest thing.
Oh God.
Latin alphabet users have to deal with 90% of the time. If you're an Arab, the difference between letters being connected or disconnected is pretty huge, but copy pasting can just randomly lose that.
Yeah.
Right. It can invert the order of the letters. It can because computers were never built for right to left. Computers were built for left to right. And if you want to store right to left characters in a computer, what actually happens in the memory is it goes, if you want to type Rami in Arabic, Re, Alif, Mim, Ye, right? Rami.
Yeah.
If you would save that in an Arab computer system, what you would expect to happen is it saves Re, Alif, Mim, Ye from right to left. What a computer does is it saves a right to left text marker, which is an invisible character you can't see, that tells the computer to start rendering from the right to the left.
Yeah.
And then from left to right has Re, Alif, Mim, Ye, and then a right to left end marker. Now, the problem with that is when you copy paste, some programs automatically say, okay, this is where that starts, this is where that ends. So if you select R, Re to Ye, we're going to include those two markers.
Yeah.
Other programs say, okay, you selected Re to Ye, you didn't select those invisible characters, so we're not going to copy those. Other programs just don't recognize the right to left marker and just don't put them in the text anymore. So when you copy paste, you don't actually know whether you're copying these invisible markers that will absolutely destroy your text if they're not there.
Wow. I didn't know that about computers, but...
Which is bonkers, because it means that you can take a translated copy of text, copy it, paste it into Photoshop, not realize it doesn't look right anymore because you've never had to think for a second in your life that text could be wrong from copy pasting.
Right.
Render the asset, and there it goes, straight into Captain America Civil War, multi-million-dollar movie, and somehow they spelled United States backwards. Which is incredible, because you can go to un.org/AR and just check whether it looks right, for God's sake.
Yeah.
It takes 5 seconds. How did you get this wrong? Apparently no Arab checked this scene.
Yeah. And I learned that copy pasting doesn't always work from programming. It was one of the first things that my first coding teacher told me. He was like, copy pasting will screw things up if you do it while you're programming. And I was like, how does that even work? But then eventually I learned that there's stuff behind the text that you don't see. Right. And I didn't know that was a thing for copy pasting Arabic text onto subtitles, but that explains a lot of why the subtitles are mostly messed up.
Everything Arabic in video games is like,
wow.
They recently did Hitman 3, super, super good studio, IO Interactive, love them. They're usually so precise with things, but I guess they missed the Arabic on some signs because they copy-pasted without checking. This is what it is.
Yeah. But it's we're nearing the time where we'll have to wrap up, and as much as I wish this could go on longer, we usually like to ask our guests for advice towards the end, and I know we've talked a lot about a lot of different things, so you could give advice about game development, about being a Muslim figure, about being Muslim in general, or just advice, because I know you mentioned that once you left Vlambeer in the last year or so, you've been learning a lot about yourself and a lot about the world. Whatever you are most passionate about and feel like you should give advice about, we would love to hear it. So,
Right. I think my favorite advice has always been never trust advice from somebody who doesn't know you. And it's not because the advice is bad, it's because the advice might not apply to you. And it's a lesson I had to learn, not because I got advice that was wrong, but because it's horrifying to see advice that you give with a certain intent be applied to a situation where you didn't intend it. Right. And the example that really shook me was I was in South Africa in Johannesburg. And I'm from the Netherlands. And the Netherlands has a great educational system, great social support structure. I was in South Africa, Johannesburg, giving a talk at a school. And a kid asked, Rami, you mentioned in your talk that you dropped out of school because you were unhappy, you felt like you weren't learning right, and you felt like you could learn better on your own. Should I drop out of school? And I said, well, I went with the diplomatic answer. If you have to ask me, then no. Right? If you have to ask me whether you should drop out of school, do not drop out of school. If you need somebody else's permission to drop out of school, do not drop out of school. Only drop out of school if you know in your heart that that is the right decision for you. And there was this teacher. She was always very kind to me. And she was the one who had organized this talk. And suddenly she had disappeared from the room. It's like, oh, that's strange. And after the talk, she came to me. And this is the small lady. I'm Dutch. I'm 2 meters tall, which is 6'5", 6'6". I'm tall. Grabs me by the collar, which I don't even know how she reached. And she just looks at me. She's like, if you ever pull that again, you're never coming back to this school. And I'm like, what did I say? And she's like, you told them that they should decide whether they drop out of school. I'm like, well, yes. And she just went like, no, you don't understand. If you drop out of school in the Netherlands, you're fine. If you drop out of school in Johannesburg and you don't have papers, what do you think happens when they don't get a job in the games industry? Huh? There's 5 companies here? They're going to go indie from South Africa? Are they going to go to GDC? Can they afford that? That's the other side of the planet. Right? 9 out of 10 kids here are not going to end up in the games industry. And if they don't end up with any papers, they have nothing else. Where do you think they go? And I never considered that. And it made me believe that all advice at its core is bad advice unless you think about the context in which it was said and to who it was spoken. Which it's probably the best advice I can give is, don't trust advice unless you know it's meant for you or people in your circumstance. So how about that one? I'll go with that one.
Not what I was expecting, but I love to hear it.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at acupofcoffeepod or email us at acupofcoffeepod@gmail.com. Be sure to follow Rami on Twitter. Link will be in the description. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Rami, and goodbye, everyone.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.